You know, usually when we talk about getting a medical diagnosis, there is this comforting expectation of precision.
Right, like engineering.
Exactly. It's binary. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points at the screen and says, well, there it is. There's the problem.
Yeah, it's visible. We inherently like things to be easily categorized like that.
But then, you step onto the tee box,
Yeah.
and you're trying to diagnose a golf swing that involves the entire human body moving at like 120 miles per hour.
Right.
And suddenly that medical x-ray machine is just completely useless. To the naked eye, we're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is honestly just murky.
Oh, it is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. I mean, trying to rely on feel or just watching a standard video on your phone to figure out why you're slicing the ball.
Yeah, it's guessing.
It's essentially like trying to diagnose that broken bone by just staring at the skin.
Yeah.
You're guessing based on surface-level symptoms.
Which is exactly why today, in part 3 of our 10-part educational series, exploring the science of golf biomechanics, kinematics, and ground reaction forces, we are finally abandoning the guesswork.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah, we are taking a massive stack of objective 3D motion capture data today. We're talking platforms like Sportsbox AI and ONform, blending it with K-Vest biofeedback and research from the International Journal of Golf Science.
It's a huge data stack.
It really is. And the mission of this deep dive is to give you, the listener, that exact X-ray vision into the golf swing. We're looking right under the hood to see exactly how elite players move laterally and rotationally.
And more importantly, how you can actually apply this exact science to fundamentally change your own consistency and distance and just, well, long-term performance.
Exactly. It's about moving from what you feel is happening to what is real.
Right. And the reality of an elite swing is entirely data-driven.
Okay, let's unpack this right from the start, because I think a lot of people approach golf coaching backward.
Oh, for sure.
Like when I want to fix a bad shot, my very first instinct is to obsess over my grip or, the angle of my wrists or where the club face is pointing at impact.
Yeah, the hands.
Right. But all of this 3D data we're looking at today almost ignores the hands entirely. It focuses heavily on the pelvis and the way the body moves laterally.
Mm-hmm.
So why spend all this time analyzing the hips when it's the club head that actually strikes the ball?
Well, because of a fundamental rule of biomechanics. It's something the elite coaching team at eCoach360 highlights perfectly. The rule is simple, really. The body controls the motion,
Right.
and that motion dictates club delivery. So if you hit a wicked slice or a terrible heavy chunk, that ball flight is just a symptom.
Like the skin over the broken bone.
Exactly. The club face position is the immediate cause, sure, but the root cause, the actual disease in the swing, is almost always a breakdown in how your body sequences its movement from the ground up.
So you're trying to put a Band-Aid on your hands when the problem is actually in your hips? But, if it's in my hips, why can't a good local pro just watch me hit a few 7-irons on the range and tell me my sequence is off?
Because of the sheer speed of human kinematics. The most critical part of a golf swing is the transitional corridor.
Okay, the transition?
Yeah, the exact moment the club changes direction at the top of your backswing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how long that transition actually takes?
It feels fast. Maybe half a second.
It happens in 0.088 seconds.
Wait, really?
Yeah. A literal blink of a human eye takes about 3 times longer than that.
That's insane.
The human eye physically cannot capture what happens in that microscopic fraction of a second. It is biologically impossible.
Wow.
And that is why visual coaching alone is just no longer enough. We have to rely on AI and 3D motion capture to genuinely understand the invisible forces at play.
Okay, so let's zoom in on that 0.088 seconds and talk about the kinematics themselves. When we look at the research from biomechanist Phil Cheatham, he talks a lot about the kinematic sequence.
Right, or kinetic linking.
Yeah, and this is essentially the strict order of operations for how energy transfers through your body to the golf ball.
Precisely. It's called a proximal-to-distal sequence.
Proximal-to-distal.
Right. So in a highly efficient downswing, energy starts in the large inner segments of your body, the proximal parts, and transfers outward to the smaller outer segments, the distal parts.
Okay.
It has to go in a very specific order to maximize power. Pelvis first, then your thorax or upper body, then the lead upper arm, and finally the club itself.
Now, here is where looking at Cheatham's data graphs genuinely surprised me, because I always assumed an athletic movement meant everything just speeds up together towards the target in one big coordinated heave.
Yeah, most people do.
But they don't.
No, they don't. And this is highly counterintuitive for most athletes. Each segment accelerates, reaches a peak speed, and then it does something wild.
Yeah.
It rapidly decelerates, it slams on the brakes.
Wait, you're telling me I want my hips to slow down before I hit the ball?
Yes.
Because that sounds like a recipe for losing all my power.
I know it sounds backward, but that rapid deceleration is precisely what transfers the energy to the next segment in the chain. Think of a bullwhip.
Okay, a bullwhip.
If you just swing a bullwhip forward with your arm and keep your arm moving at the exact same speed, the tip never cracks.
Oh, right, because it just follows your arm.
Exactly.
Right.
The only way to get the tip to break the sound barrier is to snap the handle forward and then violently stop it.
Wow.
That braking action is what rockets the energy down the leather. The body works exactly the same way. The pelvis accelerates and brakes, passing energy to the thorax.
And then the thorax breaks.
Yes, passing into the arm. Each subsequent segment peaks at a higher speed and fractionally later than the previous one, culminating with the club peaking right at impact.
That is fascinating. And that brings us right back to that 0.088-second transitional window.
Right.
The top of the swing. The club is just finishing its journey backward, but the hips are already starting to fire forward. What is physically happening inside the muscles during that split second?
That is the pelvic reset phase. What's fascinating here is that during those 0.088 seconds, the pelvis must change direction and start rotating toward the target.
Okay.
But the thorax, the upper body, is actually still completing its backswing away from the target.
They're literally twisting in opposite directions simultaneously.
Exactly. This creates what biomechanists call the X-factor stretch.
The X-factor stretch.
Right. When you separate the rotation of the pelvis from the rotation of the chest, you initiate a stretch shortening cycle in your core muscles.
So like pulling back a heavy rubber band.
Or drawing a bowstring. When a muscle is rapidly stretched just before it contracts, it stores massive amounts of elastic energy.
Which allows it to contract with far more force.
Exactly. Far more force than if it started from a resting position. You are storing explosive power. But if your sequence is off, and your chest and hips just turn together at the same time during that tiny window,
you lose the stretch.
All that elastic energy leaks out. You get no snap.
And this directly impacts efficiency, which leads perfectly into the research by Dr. Scott Lynn and his team in the International Journal of Golf Science.
Great study.
Yeah, they were looking at how this sequence affects smash factor. And just as a quick refresher for anyone listening, your smash factor is simply the ratio of ball speed to club head speed.
Right, the ultimate measure of how efficiently you are delivering energy to the ball.
Exactly. You could be swinging at 120 miles an hour, but if your smash factor is low, it's just an exhausting swing that yields terrible distance.
And Dr. Lynn's research found a really fascinating correlation here. They compared elite golfers to amateurs. And elite golfers not only have faster pelvic acceleration, but they reach their peak pelvic velocity significantly earlier before impact than the amateurs do.
Meaning they hit their top hip speed, slam on the brakes, and have a much longer window of time before the club actually reaches the ball.
Yes. This is called peak to impact time, and the data shows it directly correlates to smash factor. The longer that time gap between the hips braking and the club hitting the ball, the higher the efficiency of the strike. It scientifically proves that proper sequencing creates a solid strike, not just a fast swing.
Right, because amateurs try to swing fast by just muscling it with their arms, the distal muscles.
Exactly. Pros swing efficiently by sequencing correctly, which means their smaller muscles don't have to panic, overcompensate, and ruin the club path at the last second.
So if I'm an amateur and I'm looking at my 3D graph compared to a tour pro, how does that overcompensation actually show up in the data?
The biggest glaring difference is what Cheatham calls the casting problem.
Casting, okay.
On a pro's graph, you see smooth, staggered decelerations where the lead arm holds off and cocks the wrist, saving that final energy release for the exact moment of impact.
Right.
But in amateur data, the club's speed curve spikes way too early. Because the amateur didn't stretch that rubber band between their hips and chest, they try to generate speed by essentially throwing the club head from the top of the swing.
Oh, so they just toss it.
Yeah, they leak all their stored energy so early that the club head actually begins decelerating before it even reaches the golf ball.
They peak too early. Okay, so if amateurs are losing all that energy by casting the club, how do they fix it? It has to come from the ground, right?
It always does.
Which makes me want to push back on a piece of advice basically every golfer has heard.
Let's hear it.
People always say, shift your pressure, but whatever you do, don't shift your mass, keep your head perfectly still, or you'll sway and ruin your shot.
Ah, yes.
But honestly, isn't trying to swing a golf club without shifting your mass kind of like trying to jump without bending your knees? It just feels like you're completely robbing yourself of natural momentum.
Your intuition is spot on. Trying to completely lock your mass in place is an absolute myth, and the 3D data proves it.
I knew it.
Yeah, elite players shift both mass and pressure, but they do it dynamically.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the athletic motion golf team uses a brilliant analogy here to separate the two. Think of your body mass as a massive, heavy fire truck.
Okay, mass is the heavy truck.
Right. And your ground pressure as the brakes.
So pressure is the brakes. Got it.
So as you swing back, you absolutely want to shift your mass, the fire truck, away from the target to gather momentum and load up.
Right.
But you have to apply pressure, the brakes, to the inside of the trail foot to stop the truck from sliding right off the cliff and to push it back in the other direction.
So the pros are actually moving off the ball, but they hit the brakes before it devolves into a sloppy, uncontrollable sway.
Exactly.
And we see this clearly in the real-world data of tour players. If you look at Rory McIlroy, he has this incredibly fluid, athletic mass shift away from the ball and then powerfully back into it.
Oh, it's beautiful on a graph.
Right. Or look at Tiger Woods hitting a 3-wood. He subtly shifts his mass into his right leg, hits those brakes hard, and actually parks his pelvis dead center before his arms even start dropping the club.
And even someone with a totally different physical build, like Brooks Koepka.
Oh, yeah, bro.
He uses a much wider A-frame stance. He has a slightly later recentering move simply because his stance is wider, but he still decisively shifts his mass to the right and then drives his pelvis forward without hoisting his upper body forward with it.
The eCoach 360 pressure plate data really contextualizes the timing of this, and it just blows my mind.
It's wild. Right?
At address, you have about 50-50 pressure between your feet. By the time your lead arm is parallel to the ground in the backswing, 72% of your pressure is already in that trail foot. You've hit the brakes.
Yep.
But incredibly, by the very top of the backswing, before the club even starts coming down, the pressure has already recentered back to 50-50.
Exactly. The physical transition forward starts before the backswing even finishes.
Wow.
That is the X-Factor stretch in action. And by the time they reach the finish line, 95% of the pressure has rocketed to the lead foot.
So if I mismanage this dynamic movement, like if I mess up my fire truck brakes, what actually happens to my swing? Do I just whiff the ball entirely? Because Sportsbox AI 3D has actually quantified this exact error by measuring what they call the sway gap.
Yes, the sway gap is a critical metric. It's the horizontal distance between the center of your chest and the center of your pelvis.
Okay.
Using this data, they've identified basically two extremes of failure when you don't use the ground properly.
Right, and the first extreme is getting stuck behind the ball. In the data, this shows up as a lack of recentering or hanging back.
Yeah, exactly.
Your pelvis shifts away from the target, past that negative 2.5-inch mark, and you just get stranded on your back foot. You never make it back to center.
And when your mass is trapped back there, your body panics. You have no choice but to throw your hands at the ball to reach it.
Oh, because you're too far away.
Right. It creates that awful steep scooping motion where you're trying to lift the ball into the air, and you inevitably take a giant divot behind the ball.
And the opposite extreme is moving too much, which they categorize as excessive sway or a reverse pivot. This is sliding laterally rather than rotating.
Right. If you never hit the brakes on the trail foot, the fire truck just keeps sliding away from the target. You completely destroy your ability to coil your muscles and create elastic energy.
Makes sense.
Even worse, if you reverse pivot, your chest ends up horizontally ahead of your pelvis, leaning toward the target at the top of your swing.
Which is completely backward.
Yeah, that completely destroys the proximal-to-distal sequence we talked about.
Yeah.
It leads to really steep glancing blows across the golf ball.
Which raises an important question, though. What should that sway gap look like at the exact moment of impact? Because the data shows that pros actually increase their negative sway gap at impact.
Yes, they do.
Meaning their chest stays significantly further behind their lower body as they hit the ball.
They do. And the team at ONform confirms this with their 3D tracking. They use a visualization tool they call the smile trace.
The smile trace.
Yeah, it tracks the 3D movement of the lead shoulder. If you are using the ground dynamically, braking and pushing, your shoulder traces a deep, wide smile curve, returning slightly ahead of its starting position at impact.
Oh, wow.
This negative sway gap creates a shallower, vastly more powerful club path. If your shoulder trace is flat, it means you aren't using the ground. You're just spinning in place.
But I imagine this isn't like a one-size-fits-all posture. I mean, Dana Dahlquist's coaching really highlights how the club you are holding changes the setup constraints before you even move.
Absolutely. Setup dictates kinematics. If you have a wedge, you need pinpoint distance control. So you want your center of mass directly over the center of your stance to limit lateral movement.
With about, what, 44 to 45 degrees of forward spine tilt?
Exactly. But if you try to hit a 3-wood with that same extreme left bend and centered mass...
You'd crash the club straight down into the turf.
Exactly. A 3-wood requires a flatter attack angle, meaning around 41 degrees of bend, and a much more level shoulder turn. You have to allow for more mass shift with longer clubs.
So, synthesizing everything we've looked at today, how does the listener actually train these biomechanical concepts on the range without needing a PhD in physics? Let's talk about 3 practical drills that actually map these specific movements into your nervous system.
Let's start with fixing that hanging back fault, getting stuck on the trail foot. TS Golf has a brilliant drill called the Yoga Wedge Push. You literally place a foam yoga wedge under the outside of your trail foot.
Okay, so my trail foot is angled slightly inward. What does that actually do?
As you turn your pelvis in the backswing, you use that physical foam wedge to push your pressure away from the target.
Wait, hold on. To get my hips to move forward to the target, you want me to actively push my foot away from the target? That feels totally backward.
I know it sounds backward until you think about Newton's third law of motion. Think about being in a swimming pool.
Okay.
If you want to glide forward across the pool, you don't paddle your hands forward, you plant your feet on the wall behind you and push backward into the concrete.
Oh, and the wall pushes you forward.
The ground works the exact same way. By pushing the foam wedge away from the target, you are firing a ground reaction force that forcefully drives your pelvis forward into the lead side.
Pushing right to move left. That makes perfect sense when you visualize the pool wall.
Right.
Drill number 2 is about erasing early extension. This is that dreaded amateur move where instead of rotating, you stand up in the downswing and thrust your hips straight toward the golf ball, completely losing your posture.
Early extension happens when the body just doesn't know how to create space for the arms. eCoach 360 uses a TheraBand drill around the hips to create physical resistance, forcing the glutes to stay back and rotate.
Okay.
But Dana Dahlquist has a fantastic physical feel for this that I prefer, called the reflex.
Describe that physical sensation. What am I feeling in my body when I do the reflex?
Instead of artificially trying to pull your hands down to the ball, which causes early extension, you introduce what biomechanists call sagittal torque during the transition.
Sagittal torque.
Basically, it's a micro-squat. As you reach the top of the swing, you want to feel your weight drop straight down for just a split second.
Oh, wow.
You should feel tension in your quads and your glutes pushing into the turf. That tiny downward reflex organically drops your right elbow right in front of your hip. You don't have to pull your arms down. Gravity and the squat do it for you, allowing you to stay perfectly in your posture and rotate powerfully.
And drill number 3 from Athletic Motion Golf is called the step swing fall swing. This is entirely designed to map that Firetruck brakes mass pressure timing into your brain.
Yes. To do this, you start with your feet entirely together. As you start to swing the club back, you physically step your trail foot away from the target.
Okay, that creates your mass shift.
Exactly. Then, as the club reaches the top, you purposefully fall or step your lead foot back toward the target, planting it firmly into the ground, and then you swing through.
So it's a literal dance step. Step right, swing back, step left, swing through. Why does that work so well?
Because it forces your neuromuscular system to experience the correct timing without overthinking the golf mechanic.
You just move in.
Right. You physically cannot swing the club down until your lead foot has planted. It violently teaches your body that the pressure must recenter and plant before the downswing can ever start.
That is an incredible way to bypass the conscious brain and just teach the body to be athletic.
Absolutely.
So, summarizing this massive data stack, efficient golf is driven by that proximal-to-distal kinematic sequence, core to extremities.
Exactly.
And to make that sequence work, you cannot be afraid to move the fire truck, to shift your mass dynamically, but you must use your ground pressure to brake and recenter before you ever reach the top of your backswing.
And the overarching lesson for anyone listening is that objective measurement must take priority over your subjective feel. What you think your body is doing is rarely what it's actually doing.
Very true.
Whether you use Sportsbox AI to measure your sway gap or K-Vest to check your pelvic acceleration. Using real data is the only way to genuinely map an efficient movement pattern for your unique physiology.
Exactly. Now, we've spent this entire deep dive talking about how poor kinematics ruin your club path, sap your efficiency, and ultimately just destroy your scorecard. But building on the K-Vest biofeedback study of professional players, there is a physical consequence to all of this that we have to address before we sign off.
The injury factor, it's huge.
Right. When your sequence is wrong, your body's inertia doesn't just disappear, it actively fights you. Think about what we saw in the data. If you suffer from early extension or excessive anterior trunk tilt, which just means your chest drops too close to the ground in the downswing, where does all that 120-mile-per-hour force go?
It goes straight into the lumbar spine.
Precisely. Your lower back is forced to absorb massive rotational forces in a highly crunched, compressed state. So as you visualize your sway data or practice that micro-squat on the range this week, I want you to ask yourself something. How much of your persistent lower right back pain is actually just your body acting as a shock absorber for misplaced inertia? Because when you finally use the ground properly and fix the kinematic sequence, you don't just fix the slice, you might actually fix the pain too. We started today looking for X-ray vision to see the swing clearly, but it turns out moving correctly might just keep you out of the actual medical X-ray machine entirely. If you found today's episode valuable, please subscribe to our channel. Every subscription helps us continue producing high-quality educational content for golfers and coaches worldwide. If you have a question, topic idea, or golf challenge you would like us to research, test, and explain, please leave a comment, contact us on LinkedIn, or send us an email. Don't forget to explore the eCoach 360-degree golf intelligence platform and experience our 48-hour free trial. You can also join our 30-day golf biomechanics, kinematics, ground reaction forces, and club kinematics certification program to deepen your understanding of golf performance.